So on to triangle number 3. We've connected our first two, so I'm going to go counterclockwise once again. And I sewed in all of my previous ends. It takes a lot of discipline to sew in one's ends as one goes, but I find that it makes this process a lot easier, a lot less tanglage, if that's even a word. Anyway, all right, so we have our center hole here, and we go 3 to the right, and starting with our charcoal once more, we pull up a loop, chain 1, and single crochet into that same stitch. There we are. And then into that center, we do our cluster of 3. And because it is our corner, we do our chain 2 in between. 1 and 2. And our second cluster into that same space. There we are. And then we finish off this row with a chain 1, go into the third, right here, with a slip stitch. Voila. And then we're going to chain 2 across, 1 and 2, go into the third, so that's 1, 2, and 3, so into the middle of this cluster here with a single crochet stitch, and then we turn our work. And into the space down here, we finish our cluster, so we do 2 more double crochets, like so. Chain 1, we've reached the corner once more, so that's 2 clusters separated by 2 chains. So that's 1 cluster, chain 2, and then do our second cluster. That's 2 and 3, chain 1, and then into this bottom space here, we do another cluster, 1 and 2 and 3, chain 1, go into the third, so that's 1, 2, and 3 into the middle. There we are, with a slip stitch. Pull out the yarn, snip, snip, and then pull out the loop. And then we turn our work, and we're going to continue on with the orange. Alright, so continuing on with the orange, we skip into the third stitch, so that's 1, 2, and 3, so it's the first of the next cluster over. Grabbing our orange this time, and pulling up a loop, chain 1, and single crochet into that same stitch. There we go. Pulling on the gray just a little bit to make sure that it's taut. And we do our 3 double crochets into that space down there. Like so. And then we go up towards the apex once more, dear friends. Oops. There we are. And then since we are at the corner, it is 2 clusters separated by a chain 2. 1 and 2. And do our second cluster. That's 1 and 2 and 3. Chain 1 and work our way down the other side. Two and 3. Chain 1. And then going into this space down here, we do our next cluster. Chain 1. And then going into the third, so that's 1, 2, and 3, right into here with a slip stitch. And then we chain 2. And then we go into the next third, so that's 1, 2, and 3. So that's into the chain space. I know it's tricky, my dears, but we can persevere. There we are. Like so, with a single crochet. Then we turn our work. And then we finish up the cluster with 2 more double crochets into that space. Chain 1. And then work our stitches up the side of the triangle. It's 2, 3, chain 1, 1 and 2 and 3, chain 1. And then at the top, we do 2 clusters separated by a chain 2 space. That's 1 and 2. Whoop, hello. 2 and 3. Okay, and then we work our way down the side once again. Chain 1. Do yet another cluster. Chain 1. And sorry, I keep having to readjust my piece because it keeps bunching up, getting in the way, or screwing with the focus, and I'm trying to finagle all of this while teaching you how to do this pattern. It's a lot to keep track of, but hey, I'm resilient. All right, so we're doing our last cluster into that space down there. Ta-da! All right, and then we chain 1. And then going into the third, so that's 1, 2, and 3, so that's into that chain space right there. If I can manage it, there we go. And we do a slip stitch. All right, snip, snip. And that is the end of our orange. And then on to the green. Yes, indeed. All right, so to do our green, again, we skip over 3. 1, 2, and 3. So into the last double crochet of this cluster. Yeah, I'm in there. All right. We take our green and pull up a loop. Do a chain 1. Do a single crochet into that same stitch. And then make sure our orange is taut. Going into that space, do our 3 double crochets. 2 and 3. Chain 1. And then work our way across as we have done twice already. Well, many more times than twice, but 2 triangles already. All right. It's worth it, though. All of this, I think. All right. And there we go. Well, because as I said in previous videos, it's like, if I can help just one person make sense of this pattern, and they really get it, well, then my job is done, and it's all worth it. So we're in the corner, so we do our chain 2 and then another cluster. You know me, I always say knowledge is power, but sharing is caring. Well, hey, it's how I roll. All right, so going along the other side here with our clusters. Chain 1. And there we are. Go. Oops, come on. And almost there. All right, so the last cluster of this row is down into here with 3 double crochets, chain 1, and then we need to go into the 3rd, of course. So that's 1, 2, and 3 with a slip stitch, chain 2. Go into the 3rd again, so that's 1, 2, and 3, so that's the middle one, with a single crochet. Turn the work, and then finish the cluster with 2 more double crochets. There we are, chain 1. And then work our way across. I don't know about you guys, but between this project and my other projects and the various books that I'm reading, I've got me a full plate. I mean, yes, at the moment I am working on reading for you guys Pride and Prejudice, Alice in Wonderland, Aesop's Fables, Grimm's Fairy Tales, Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, some Edgar Allan Poe, The Wizard of Oz, quite a bit. But also, of course, I do like to read, in my spare time. Well, what spare time, you may ask? For myself as well, things that I'm not able to read for the channel, unfortunately, due to copyrights and that sort of thing. Chain 1, and then we're up at the apex again, so that's 2 clusters separated by a chain 2. For a while I was rereading the Harry Potter series. Good series, I rather like it. In a sense, they're almost like murder mysteries, especially towards the end. A bit dark as things keep progressing, but, rather enjoyable series. I do like them. All right, so we've got our clusters down there. And then we're going to continue right along down the other side. And speaking of murder mysteries, I did finish rereading yet another. I love rereading books. It's like having a visit with an old friend. A really great murder mystery book that I would totally recommend to anybody that enjoys them. It's by Agatha Christie. It's called And Then There Were None, also known as 10 Little Indians. Great book. And no, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but I will say that it is one of my favorites and has been since I was a teenager. And that, regrettably, was many moons ago. All right, so we're almost done with this row here. Okay. And then into this last cluster down here. All right, almost there. Chain 1, and then skip over 3. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So into the middle there with a slip stitch. And then we chain up 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then we turn our work to do the last row of this triangle. Okay. We're really getting there, my dears. All right. Okay. So we're just going to do 2 more double crochets into that space to complete our cluster, and then we're going to work our way across. Yeah, so, And Then There Were None, really great story, mystery story for those of you that like them. Basic plot, which I will not go into too much detail. Basic plot is you have 10 people who go to a fabulous island with only one house. And they all have been invited by this host that they really don't know who it is. And then one by one, they get picked off by a mystery killer. And the really uncanny thing is that it is all according to a nursery rhyme. So it gives it sort of a really dark twist. Absolutely one of my favorites. And they've done several movie adaptations of the book as well. There was one really good one back in, I want to say it was the 1940s, which is one of my favorites. It was an old black and white. Very noir. Loved it. And they've done quite a few other renditions. One of them was absolutely terrible. It was called 10 Little Indians, and it had, I believe, Fabian in it as one of the characters, and that version was not, in my opinion, any good at all. All right, so getting back to what I was doing here, chain 2, and then finish with our second cluster. Yeah, it strayed way too far from the original story as far as I'm concerned. And hit a bit of a knot, sorry. There we go. Yeah, it strayed way too far from the original text, and therefore I found it was almost laughably farcical by comparison. Chain 1. However, I will say that there was a very recent adaptation done by, I think it was done by the BBC, and the BBC in my opinion, have done some truly remarkable works. And in this one, it really did capture the flavor of the book very, very well. And the acting was superb, and the ending was far more faithful to the book than any other adaptation that I have seen. So I would highly recommend it to any of those of you that have any interest. You know, not just a book nut and a craft lover, but also I do love movies. Alright, so we are almost done with this triangle, my dears. I'm so excited. And I do love chatting with you, and it is kind of surreal to be essentially talking to myself for such a prolonged period of time. However, I find that it helps get through this rather laborious process, which I am enjoying, but also it is kind of odd to do nonetheless. So we have our last cluster down into here. So I will ask that for those of you that are actually watching, if you would prefer that I would cut out the anecdotes and the chatter, please let me know, because I don't wish to disturb nor bother you. But I find that it helps facilitate the process and flow of this project, if you will. All right, so we ended our cluster, we did a chain 1, and now we do a slip stitch into that third top chain. There we are. And we'll do our slip stitch like so. And snip, snip. And then voila! We are really coming along. Very exciting. Absolutely love it. Alright, so I'm going to take a bit of a break, and I'm going to sew in my ends, and then we will do the last triangle. Alright, be right back.